I'm not here with my budget commissioner, Piotr Serafin, because he, right after college, has dashed to the Parliament to give the budget presentation there in the Parliament. We had promised that we do that immediately. The moment he's done, he's going to come back. Either he's able to join me, or we will have, as far as I understand, a technical briefing. So, yes, today the College adopted the Commission's proposal on the MFF, the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, the budget for 2028 to 2034. It is a 2 trillion budget for a new era. It is a budget that matches Europe's ambition, that confronts Europe's challenges, and that strengthens our independence. The budget is larger, it is smarter, and it is sharper. It is a budget that delivers for our citizens and our business, our partners and our future. The next MFF will be the most ambitious ever proposed. It is more strategic, more flexible, more transparent, and we are investing more in our capacity to respond and more in our independence. Yet, crucially, Member States' contributions to the EU budget will remain constant, as we propose a step change in the new own resources. I will outline 5 key areas, and I start with the first, investing in people, Member States and regions. The core here are the national and regional partnership plans with 865 billion euros. They are the foundation for investment and reform, and we've produced a slide that shows a bit how these different funds that we have today, as mostly working as stovepipes, very little interlinked, can work together and integrate more so that the objective, the European objective, is better implemented on the ground. At the heart of these national and regional partnership plans remains agriculture and cohesion. They are the central pillars of European solidarity and investment in the European model. We are safeguarding 300 billion euros for farmers' income support. This includes a doubled agricultural reserve, so our farmers' livelihoods are protected. In cohesion, we are safeguarding for less developed regions, so that the investment in less developed regions has a minimum of 218 billion euros. On fisheries, 2 billion euros are ring-fenced as a minimum. The national and regional partnership plans also provide the financial resources for social policies. Here, for the very first time, there is a target for social expenditure of 14%, so mainstreaming. And also for the very first time, we will track social funding across the entire MFF. We are also tripling investment in migration and border management, because Europe's borders are a shared responsibility. And we are tripling the Solidarity Fund so that we can act fast and decisively when disasters strike. So the purpose of the national and the regional partnership plans is that the one single plan a member state develops with the European priorities, that the plan integrates the different funds in a way that we can better manage it. Today we often see that you have several overlapping funds that potentially fund the same objective, but they are different in timelines, different in criteria for eligibility, different in what they target. So very difficult to find in these different funds the right one for the purpose, and a lot of redundancy and overlapping is basically wasting potential that we cannot unlock for the regions and the member states. Having said that, for the very first time, we also give the member states a possibility to invest in EU objectives with loans of up to 150 billion euros that are backed by the European Union. We call this Catalyst Europe. The loans are backed by the EU budget. We take the loans and hand them over to the member states. Those member states who want, for favourable conditions, boost, for example, specific European priorities. You can think of defence industry, you can think of energy infrastructure, strategic technologies, and others. So the Catalyst Europe will give member states additional means to invest in these European objectives. It's the very first time that such an additional financing source is proposed. I've spoken about the different elements that compose or that put together the national and regional partnership plans. Within these national and regional partnership plans, we propose a simple and transparent allocation system. This system builds on key principles like regional disparities, poverty risk, agriculture needs, tensions at our borders, etc. So again, these plans are tailor-made because the regions have different needs and they know best how to implement European policies and priorities in their territories and their communities. As our member states and specifically our regions are very different, but we have the overarching European priorities, this combination of having one single plan that is tailor-made for the region or for the member states, while there is the European funding easily accessible and clear investment and reform as a requirement, is here an absolute novelty. The national and regional partnership plans enable a more strategic allocation that reflects European priorities on the ground. I give you an example, housing. Housing today, you would never find the fund that is the right one for housing. But it's a huge topic all over the European Union with very different phases. So why the housing difficulties are in the different regions and member states. With one approach of a national and regional partnership plan, the one plan, you can take this cross-cutting topic and work with it within the plan, depending on how the specificities of the region or the member states are. So instead of having 10 different funds, with different rules, different timelines and different criteria, often overlapping, we now have the national and regional partnership plans that put European priorities under one roof. They're easier to align with the local needs. They are simpler to manage for national and local authorities. And crucially, they are, of course, more powerful when combined. I want to share a moment on the respect for the rule of law within the national and regional partnership plans, but in all the MFF that is being proposed. The respect for the rule of law is unconditional. The rule of law is a must for all funding from the EU budget. And with the next MFF, we go further. The national and regional partnership plans will make the rule of law and fundamental rights a condition for investment and a focus for the reforms. As I said, the rule of law applies to all funds, and it will be smart conditionality. We will ensure responsible spending and full accountability with very strong safeguards, clear conditions, and the right incentives. This serves the citizens. Another important topic for citizens, especially the young, is Erasmus+, which is increased in this proposal by 50%. Then there's the topic of support to civil society. We will support civil society with different programs, for example, both the national and regional partnerships and the Competitiveness Fund will support life activities. These are activities for the environment, biodiversity, the circular economy, etc. And in addition, we have a new Agora EU program that is building on Creative Europe and SERVE. We're putting it as one, and we call this program Agora. It will support media freedom, values, civil rights, democracy, and diversity. So far for the national and regional partnership plans. As you know, the new budget has this entity. Then it has a second big block, which is the Competitiveness Fund. The Competitiveness Fund will be proposed as a fund with 410 billion euros, because we think it's crucial to back the strategic technologies of tomorrow. We really put an emphasis on this Competitiveness Fund, funding the strategic technologies that we need for the future markets. And therefore, a few figures. The Competitiveness Fund includes a doubling of Horizon Europe. It is already a big program. It's one of the most renowned programs we have worldwide, the most renowned scientific and research program. We will double it. We multiply by 5 our investment in the digital to build a secure and innovative digital ecosystem. We will make a major boost in clean tech, the bioeconomy and decarbonization, with a 6 times increase of the funds from the EU budget that are funding this topic. And here, again, the clean technologies, the decarbonization, the circularity. In addition, we will have a climate and biodiversity spending target, so mainstreaming, of 35% for the new MFF. This is spending that serves the European Union's 6 environmental objectives. And if you look at this mainstreaming, this amounts to around 700 billion euros. The Competitiveness Fund is, as you know, part of the agenda for European sovereignty, which will enable us to secure supply chains, scale up innovation, and lead the global race for clean and smart technology. It is basically the answer to the call made by Mario Draghi and Enrico Letta, who both said this is necessary. Here is the answer in our proposal. It's a call for a strong industrial base, for a more integrated single market, and a united Europe that plays to its strength. Within the Competitiveness Fund, there are the topics for defence and space. And I want to highlight that. We are proposing 131 billion euros for the defence and space window within the Competitiveness Fund. That is 5 times of what we have today, because we know that security is a top concern for citizens and governments, and it will strengthen our industrial base and our capabilities. So far for the Competitiveness Fund. Next to the Competitiveness Fund are the Connecting Europe facilities. We have them for transport and we have them for energy. We are doubling the Connecting Europe facility for transport, and we are multiplying military mobility by 10. That is part of transport, so that our armed forces can move faster, better, and together. And very important, we are multiplying energy infrastructure spending by 5 times what we have today for Connecting Europe facility energy. This reinforces energy independence and accelerates the clean transition. And we're significantly increasing the investment in cybersecurity and dual-use infrastructure. This is about European defence, about European connectivity and European readiness. We've looked at the national and regional plans. We've looked at the Competitiveness Fund. Now let's look at the third building pillar that is outside the European Union, Global Europe, a fund with 200 billion euros, an instrument, I must say, with 200 billion euros. This is an increase of 75% to match our responsibilities on the global stage. So this is, again, the same principle. We take Global Gateway, humanitarian aid, strategic partnerships, all in one, and most crucially, of course, also our support for enlargement. Let me shed a word on enlargement. Enlargement is a key priority. It is not just a political objective, it is a strategic investment in Europe's stability and prosperity. And that is why we are opening the full toolbox of global Europe to candidate countries, not only technical assistance, but also support for reforms and investments backed by resources. On top of this, we are setting aside 100 billion euros for Ukraine. You know we have the Ukraine facility for reconstruction. It was initially, with the midterm review, filled with 50 billion. These are slowly but surely going down in the amounts, and therefore we are suggesting 100 billion euros to fill up again the Ukraine facility to support recovery, resilience, and, of course, their path to the EU membership. Now, for accession itself, it is, as it always was with all accessions in the past, there is a specific revision clause in the MFF that says if there is an accession of a candidate country, there will be a revision of the MFF, which is logical because we will have to negotiate depending on what size the country has that joins the European Union. We have to negotiate in the accession treaty the phase-in of cohesion payment, the phase-in of agriculture payments, for example, for this country, but also the phase-in of contribution of that country, accession country, to the European Union. All this has to be negotiated and discussed, and therefore very clear the promise and the obligation in the financial regulation that with an accession there will be a revision of the MFF. It worked in the past accessions and it will work now. Fifth point, a budget built for resilience and agility. This is the topic of crisis. We have witnessed crisis, at least I have witnessed crisis since the beginning of my mandate. It started with Corona, then we had a heavy energy crisis, then the Russian war in Ukraine. And each time it was extremely difficult to react fast and with the financial firepower that was necessary. Because, as you know, our budget today is designed in a way that 90% are fixed. This budget has been designed 2018-2019, but we live today with this 90% fixed. What we then did is we tried to use the Article 122, which is suboptimal. It's not the best instrument to have for such severe crisis. This is why we are creating a dedicated crisis mechanism with a firepower of up to almost 400 billion euros, because crises are no longer the exception, they are the norm, and we've learned the lesson. I want to be very clear. This is not for expenses or expenditure. It is the possibility, with strong safeguards, to access this additional funding in case that the unknown crisis hits. So it's something we have as a possibility, but not to be used for normal times. It's only for crisis times with a clear mechanism how to trigger it and how to safeguard it. Finally, this all has to be financed. And this is my sixth and final point, new own resources. Yep, here is what has to be financed. Today, we are proposing new sources of revenues to the European budget. The goal is simple. We have to repay our shared recovery borrowing, so Next Generation EU has to be repaid. We must meet our modern priorities, and most importantly, we want to keep the national contributions stable. As you know, there are only two ways to finance the European budget, either national contributions or own resources to the European budget. And therefore, if we want to keep the national contributions of the member states stable, there is a need to have new own resources to pay back Next Generation EU and to finance the additional modernization of the budget. To conclude, this is a budget for the realities of today as well as the challenges of tomorrow. A budget that equips us to act on our political choices in a very fast-moving world. We want greater flexibility. Not everything should be decided once for 7 years. So also today, we cannot foresee how the years 2033 or 2034 will look like. Therefore, we want less rigidity in this budget. Therefore, the big funds that give us more flexibility and room to act. Greater flexibility means more room also for the annual budget decision, where Parliament and Council play a vital role. Today we have presented our proposal. Now we continue the work with the European Parliament, with the Member States and with the citizens and businesses. Thank you very much, and I'm glad or happy to take questions.
Thank you, President. And rest assured, we will be circulating the presentation from President von der Leyen. And as the President mentioned at the very beginning, this will also be followed by a technical briefing where you will have the opportunity to ask your more technical questions. But for now, questions to the President. Raffaella, please.
Thank you, Raffaella Scheidretter for the Austrian broadcaster ORF. President, for sure you've seen and heard the farmers' protests outside the Parlement building in the afternoon. So could you please elaborate what exactly does it mean now for farmers, for their subsidies, if all those subsidies are included in the national plans in the future? Or in other words, does it